to Heel Heat presents Under the Radar. I'm Gary Rhodes. This is my tag team partner, Little Spike Dudley.
George Coles, that is.
And today we're going to talk about a legitimate badass, Haku or Meng from WCW fame. And we're going to go over, I knew him as Haku more than anything else because, I started watching when I was a little kid, and he came out when we were about how old?
About 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And he came into the WWE earlier that time, but we'll talk about a little bit before then as well. Haku, of course, is one of the member, and we're going to call him Haku through the show.
Yes, I'm more used to Haku.
That's what. But you guys, Haku Meng Sing guy. He's one of the legendary Samoan family, of course. Everybody knows that. Now, he started off as a kid. He was sent to Japan to study sumo wrestling. Also at the same class, when he was 10 years old, sent over there as well, was the guy that ended up becoming the Barbarian, which plays a big part in his career later.
Now, aren't they cousins, or...?
They're related somehow.
Yeah, I mean, most of them all are.
I believe the whole island of Samoa is related in some way or another.
Yeah.
At least when they show up on TV, they're related one way or another. And it's a small island, so I'm sure after a couple generations of marrying, everybody's related.
Somewhere, somehow.
Kind of like Kentucky.
Yeah, but they don't split. Anyway, we don't want to alienate any of our fans from Kentucky.
And their tree goes up and down.
Exactly.
There's no branches.
No, it's a straight up board.
But anyway, after he was doing sumo and did pretty well in sumo, there was a dispute after his trainers quit with the new trainers that were brought in, and he ended up leaving and going to All Japan Pro Wrestling, which at the time, All Japan was still is one of the major forces of wrestling in the world, and at that time they were wrestling a more of a shoot style wrestling, where everything was very, very hard hitting, very almost a real wrestling.
I mean, you look at the guys that had that Japan style. I mean, not just New Japan or All Japan, but a lot of guys had that same style. I mean, you look at a lot of guys that were considered tough guys in their day, like Chris Benoit, Jericho. Jericho picked up a lot in Japan too.
And even before that, at this time, you had guys like Funk going over there, Bruiser Brody, guys over there.
Stan the Lariat Hansen.
Plus the Japanese talent that was already there. Misawa, who was Tiger Mask. Some other guys, Inoki, which at this time he was towards the end of his career, but a ton of guys over there. They wrestled over there. You had to basically fight your way to get respect. And that's how they were brought up. If you look at Hulk Hogan's DVD, where he talks about I forget what was the guy's name that trained him.
Oh shoot, I can't remember, but broke his leg.
Yeah, but basically that's where they got it from the Japanese dojos. You would literally be in the dojo 2-3 years before you ever debuted, and that's where Meng/Haku got his start as a professional wrestler. Now after that, he went to wrestle in Montreal as King Tonga in the early 80s and had a pretty successful run there. And then, of course,
by 86 is when he went to work for Vince.
And that's when Vince was buying up everybody's best talent. And, of course, Haku was one of the best talents at the time coming out of Montreal.
And he got famous in 86 for slamming Big John Studd.
Yeah, that's when they brought him in. He slammed John Studd, and that was a big thing on his bring-in to make him big. Of course, everybody knows at this time he started tagging up with Samu, who up until that point was the Tonga Kid, which interestingly enough, Haku's actually from Tonga and Samu's from Samoa.
Yes.
But he was billed as a Tonga Kid and Haku wasn't, but that's a different story for a different day. They became the Islanders, which were a pretty successful mid-card team. The biggest thing in their career was
the feud with the British Bulldogs,
which culminated in WrestleMania 4 after Heenan and the Islanders kidnapped Matilda.
I still remember that pay-per-view. Remember when Heenan came out with a dog jacket on?
Yeah.
That was hilarious, And that's another thing with Haku that he could always have on his resume, that he was managed by Bobby Heenan, which if you're a heel, that's the guy you want to have manage you.
Yeah, and they were a really good tag team. They were kind of the new version of the Wild Samoans, who, by the time that Samu and Haku had started wrestling, they were at the end of their career. They stopped. Basically, they stopped wrestling together as a team altogether. They made spot appearances here and there, but that was the end of their run. So it was the next, Samoan team to be in the WWE or WWF at the time, which there's always at least one from the family there.
Now, is this around the same time when WCW had the Samoan SWAT team, right?
No, that was later on.
Okay. Because I was getting kind of confused on that one.
Yeah, later on. The Samoan SWAT team was about 89. But this was in 86, and it lasted till right about 88. They did a little bit. They wrestled guys like the Rockers at the time. Demolition, they had a lot of good matches with. They had good matches with the Killer Bees, Strike Force. All the babyface teams of the time. They never won the tag titles as the Islanders.
No. Which was kind of a shame because they were a solid team.
Yeah. And both of them were really good workers. Now, after that, about 88, they came across a problem where Harley Race was building the WWF as the king of wrestling. Kind of as a respect for Harley, they made up the title for him. But Harley got injured in a match with Hulk Hogan, believe it or not.
Not Hulk.
And I don't know what really happened in the match. I've never seen the match, but they passed the mantle of king on to Haku and kind of broke him away from the Highlanders. Or Islanders. I'm thinking
we're in their kilts.
I'm thinking of Robbie and Rory here. But as the king, he was still managed by Bobby Heenan. He had more of instead of a more high-flying style, he showed his more vicious side.
Yes.
Started to come out at this point. And then
it was like 89's when Race came back and they had their match.
They were both. It was one of the weird occasions at the time that it was heel versus heel, and they were both managed by Bobby Heenan. At the Royal Rumble '89, Haku and Harley Race fought each other, which was a really good match. We're gonna put some matches down in our comments in our description of this, and check those out. These are the matches that we just found on YouTube that you could watch and get a good idea of what Haku's career was about if you didn't know anything about him. And if you did, go back and check them out anyway, because they're all tremendous matches.
Oh, yes.
But that was one of the matches we put on there. It's a really good match. As you know, if you watch our show for any length of time, I'm a really big Harley Race fan. He's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. And him and Haku did not disappoint. I mean, Harley, 2 years later, he retires, so he was at the very tail end of his career. He retired as a wrestler. He would go on to be a manager.
Vader and others.
And then after the run as King Haku, he would team up with Andre the Giant, who at the time couldn't really work other than a few spots here and there. So they put him with Haku, and Haku, they were what were they called? The
Colossal Connection.
That's it.
And Haku really, did one thing great, is he covered up the fact that Andre was hurt.
Yeah.
Andre come in, do his little spot, tag in Haku. Haku would come in and work the most of the match. And that shows that they had a lot of respect for Haku at that point. For one reason, you're putting him with the number 2 guy in the company. Yeah. Hogan was number 1 at that point, but I mean, at that point, he was still number 2, no matter who was number 1 contender or anything like that. I mean, he was Andre the Giant. And that was a lot of respect they put on Haku.
Well, and it shows, too, he's basically wrestling handicap matches every night. And these guys, they actually won the tag team titles off of Demolition, who was the hottest team in the WWF at the time, which is who they'd eventually lose them back to, because Demolition at the time was huge. That was who was the WWF's answer to the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors.
I'm sorry, Ed.
Dungeon Doom's later in the game.
I'm sorry. Giggity.
Do you want to go ahead and hit your tag team impression?
No, come on, let's do this here. I gotta bust his balls, folks. It's just funny. And he can't be all serious.
But, he did. It was a very successful run he had with the Giant. Again, he covered up a lot of the Giant's deficiencies at the time. Andre the Giant, what was this, about 89? Mm-hmm. So Andre the Giant, what did he die in, 91? At this point, in the last year of his career, his life, he was really, really bad off. I don't remember which one it was, but there's a Clash of the Champions in, I think, 90 or early 91, where he comes out and he's on crutches and everything, and he barely even makes it to the ring on crutches.
Yeah.
And it was just WCW trying to get him in there for name value.
Mm-hmm.
But they were, I mean, it was a decent run he had with Andre. He, like I said, he carried him for a while, and it, you know, gave Andre one last good run at the top.
And they gave him a title, because they really kind of didn't give him the world title. Like,
well, he's in the books as winning it.
Yes, but they didn't give him a run at it really, just for a day, was it?
No, it was like 45 minutes, because he won it on Saturday night's main event, sold the belt to $1 Million Man, and I think on the same main event, Jack Tunney, like, what did he
vacated the title.
Vacated the title, which set up the WrestleMania 4 tournament, which, if you like it or not, a lot of people don't like that WrestleMania. I was personally a fan of it. I liked it.
I used to like King of the Ring, so.
Yeah. But a lot of people didn't like that. They didn't like the participants in the tournament. They didn't like the end match. The only problem I had with that tournament is I really do think that DiBiase should have won. Because DiBiase was the biggest heel at the time. And Savage was still the second biggest face behind Hogan.
Yeah. Well, back to Haku, though. He took a couple of years off, didn't he, before he went to WCW?
Yeah,
he worked for Rob Parker.
Took a few years off, and then they brought him in as Rob Parker's bodyguard, Colonel Rob Parker. And originally he would be out there with just a suit on and didn't do much, just would help out Rob Parker, make sure none of the faces could get to him. But they kind of worked him into where he started wrestling matches again.
Well, the thing is, I liked it because they worked him into almost like a monster. I think it was Dusty Rhodes that hit him over the head with a wooden chair and just smashed over his head, and he's just standing there staring at Dusty. I always thought of Haku or Meng at that time as just a badass.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, he's one of the people that legitimately outside of the ring is a badass. There's a legendary story where him and Jimmy Jack Funk got into a fight backstage, and he ripped out one of Jack Funk's eyes.
What about it?
And then there's another story where he bit off somebody's tip of their nose. I mean, the guy was just a brutal man. Bobby Heenan said of him that he's one of the nicest people you ever met until you piss him off. And then,
well, if you ever noticed that, that's the same with a lot of Samoans, though. A lot of them are the sweetest, nicest people in the world, give you a shirt off their back, but you piss them off and they'll kill you.
Yeah. Well, that's like Yokozuna. That's what the Usos were talking about on induction in the Hall of Fame. That Uncle Rodney was such a nice guy, and here he is on TV as Yokozuna killing everybody.
He's like, he's not Japanese. I just remembered that from the Hall of Fame speech. If you ever watch that, it's an excellent watch too.
Yeah. Because Yoko deserved it, and Haku is somebody that really deserves
that's
to
what
go.
That's what I was getting to, because I mean, you look at the matches the guys put on, the career the guy's had. He hasn't had like the giantest career, but they put a lot on him, and he delivered every time.
That's kind of the purpose of what we did with these under the radars, is guys that that have actually fell under the radar, that are being forgotten by time, but at their time they were tremendous workers and big draws.
Mm-hmm.
And Haku definitely fits the role. I mean, he's been, and after the Rob Parker stuff, he joined the Dungeon of Doom, which was built to destroy Hulk Hogan, led by Jimmy Hart and Kevin Sullivan, and King Curtis Iaukea. I forget what they called King Curtis at the time, though.
I can't remember.
It was the Taskmaster was Kevin Sullivan.
Master is what they always called him. I can't remember.
I don't remember, but he had a different name other than King Curtis, but it was King Curtis Iaukea that was the one of the leaders of the Dungeon. Really goofy shit, to be honest with you. Kind of WCW was still trying to do the cartoony stuff that had worked earlier in the decade, in the 80s with the...
Well, thankfully that's when the NWO came out.
Well, that was a little bit later.
Well, I mean, it kind of killed, that gimmick got killed as soon as the NWO came out. They kept the Horsemen around, but pretty much phased out the Dungeon of Doom, and
then
just kept them as the face of fear.
Dungeon of Doom had a lot of the gimmicks too, like Earthquake as a shark, the Yeti coming in. Didn't they bring in the Ultimate Solution?
Yeah, they had so much cheesy shit there, it got tiring to watch.
Yeah.
I remember, I was watching that Halloween Havoc, and they had the Giant and the Yeti bear hugging Hogan, looking like they were humping him.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is bullshit. I went and watched Raw the next day.
But out of the Dungeon of Doom, they put together a great tag team. Him and Haku and the Barbarian, who tagged a little bit in WWF before this, but this was the first time they were actually given a run as a tag team, and they were a really solid team. They were, I don't think they ever won the titles, but they had really good matches with guys like the Blue Bloods, the Steiner Brothers, Harlem Heat. I mean, basically the who's who of wrestling at the time. And it was really, really good stuff. They carried on, like you said, even after the NWA came in, and they got rid of the goofy, cartoony gimmicks, or they phased them all out. They still went on as the Dungeon of Doom and wrestled on several Nitros and Raws, or not Raws, Nitros and Thunders.
Thunders, yeah. Oh my.
Yes. And Saturday nights. I remember there were a lot of times where the Dungeon of Doom were the main event on Saturday night. And they would face guys like Luger and Sting or whoever they needed to put over at the time, which is basically what WCW used them to build up other tag teams at the time.
So when further on, he became the hardcore champion for them in 2001, wasn't it?
Yeah, they built their hardcore division basically around him, Fit Finlay, and Hardcore Hack, who was the Sandman, and Brian Knobbs. And these were the guys they brought their hardcore division around. He wins the title in 2001. Now, looking it up online, they say he gave the title to the Barbarian, but at the time watching it, I don't remember him actually giving the title over. Do you remember him doing that? It says online that he did, so he may well have, and it just slips my mind. But from what I thought, because a week after he won it, he was a surprise entrance in the Royal Rumble.
Yes.
And I thought that he came into the Royal Rumble even back then, reading the dirt sheets. I swear I remember it saying he was still the hardcore champion when he entered the Royal Rumble as Haku as a surprise appearance, which at the time everybody popped for him. A lot of people popped. These surprise appearances in the Royal Rumble, like Diesel last year, like Booker T last year, everybody pops for him because it's not what you're expecting, and
Exactly.
they do like to throw a lot of swerves in there.
Plus, he came out looking all wild too. He didn't have his hair tied back,
Yeah, he had it all
bushed up and stuff like that.
Is that the same? Not to go off subject, but is that the same Rumble that Perfect came back in?
No, Perfect came back in
The year
in
later.
2002 after.
So it was a year later that was the Perfect one.
Yeah.
But okay. But anyway, after the Royal Rumble, he tagged with Rikishi, who's actually his old tag team partner, Samu's brother. And they had a decent run. The problem was Kishi got injured, so they kind of phased that out. And then Haku really started wrestling he was more of a Sunday Night Heat kind of guy. He had a few appearances on SmackDown and Raw, but mostly he was wrestling on Heat, to the point where I think when his contract came up, they just didn't re-sign him. And basically that led to the end of his career. Now after that, he's made a few spot appearances in indie shows. I think he owns a car dealership now.
I'm sure he does. I mean, he seems like a very smart guy out of the ring.
Yeah, and he worked his gimmick really well. And then the latest appearance he had was earlier this year in the King of Trios tournament, which is a huge tournament that's put on by Chikara every year. Him, Warlord, and Barbarian wrestled as a three-way team, and they ended up losing in the first round to the Ring of Honor constituent that I think the Ring of Honor team won. But that was his latest appearance in a wrestling ring.
Well, I have a question for you. If you could have a Haku dream match, who would you think his dream opponent would be for someone his style?
You know what I always wanted to see, and I don't think they ever did it, was Haku versus Bam Bam Bigelow.
That'd be good. You know who I would go with? I would go with Haku and a guy from now, Kane.
That would be awesome.
Because, Haku could always take all the pain, and Kane likes delivering it. And he could take a great amount of pain. So.
Or even another one, Haku and Foley.
Foley, like what, 88 or 98?
Yeah, right about the King of the Ring era.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm sure they probably wrestled each other back in the day. I mean, they were both pretty big back in the early 90s also. That'd be a great match, though.
You know, it was good, too, Haku's matches with Sting, which he lost them all, but he did put on good efforts against Sting.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he's a solid worker. He's a big guy. And like I said, I think that it's a shame that the man isn't in the Hall of Fame.
No, he's definitely someone that should be in there. hopefully when they do something, maybe another West Coast Hall of Fame, they'll put him in, so they'll get more of the Samoan people to come over.
Or a thing they could do also is, how about this? I don't know if it would be an idea or not. They did the Horsemen. What about the Heenan family?
Why not?
You know, I mean, I think that'd be pretty cool. And they just, you know, all his popular members that aren't in the Hall of Fame, like Rude, him, Barbarian.
Stud's in there.
Yeah.
Hercules Hernandez.
You know, like I said, most of the guys that wouldn't get in there on their own or wouldn't have a lot of face value, bring them in under the Heenan family. I think that'd be good. And plus, that gives Bobby a second ring too.
See, the only problem with that is Bobby can't talk much anymore. He'd be the guy that would have to talk for him.
Yeah.
But
I just think it'd be a good little gimmick.
I think Haku deserves it on his own. I mean, if guys like Coco Beware could go in there, Haku definitely deserves to be in there. I mean, he's better than Johnny Rods. He's better than Coco Beware. Mm-hmm. He's just as important, in my opinion, as Big John Studd was.
Oh yeah. Well, how about this? When you know, put your opinions on our on the page.
Put it on our let us know on Facebook. Let us know on Twitter. Put it in our comments. Let us know if you think Haku should or should not be in the Hall of Fame. We both think he should. Let us know what you think about that. And you can put it down where?
Down there.
They still gave him a spot.
Anyways, we'll see you the next time we have one of these shows. I'm Gary Rhodes.
I'm George Coles, and this has been Under the Radar.